More questions about decisions being made at the Canada-U.S. border. More questions that follow a CBC News investigation. Last month, we revealed that executives from an American company arrived in Canada by private jet, and they were allowed to skip the mandatory 14-day quarantine laws. Well, that story caused quite the stir. The federal government at the time saying it was a mistake from CBSA officers. Well, CBC News has learned that was not a one-time incident. Investigator Jonathan Gatehouse is with me this morning. He did the original work. He's done the subsequent investigation. Great to see you on this, Jonathan. What have you now uncovered?
Well, Heather, we've uncovered what appears to be another mistake on the part of the federal government. CBC News has learned that two executives from Costco, the CEO, Craig Jelinek, and the executive vice president, Joe Portera, arrived in Ottawa on a private jet in late August. They were led into the country as essential workers and told that they didn't have to do the mandatory 14-day COVID-19 quarantine. Instead, they spent 3 days traveling across the country, heading off to Quebec and Ottawa and Alberta, Calgary, three of the biggest hotspots for COVID-19 in this country. And why they were here was for the grand openings of new Costco warehouses in Sherbrooke and Ottawa and just south of Calgary. And what's really interesting about this is that these Costco executives touched down on the exact same day, August 25th, as the executives in our previous story from Uline, the U.S. shipping company, who arrived in Toronto on their private jet and were also exempt from having to do the quarantine.
On that very day, coincidental timing there as you continue to learn. So certainly we had a big response to your initial investigation from the government. What is the government, what is the CBSA saying about this latest chapter, Jonathan?
Well, we asked for an interview with Public Safety Minister Bill Blair, and he declined, but his office says that this is indeed another mistake and that it is again the fault of frontline CBSA officers in Ottawa this time. And it's a similar situation as the case in Toronto, that they should not have been let in at all, let alone allowed to skip the self-isolation. His department says that they have put new rules and directives in place for border service officers so that there is a tighter sense of the entry protocols at the border. It's in particular for business travel. And the CBSA, for their part, they also won't go on camera and do an interview. They say that they're not aware of any other cases like these. But this does have a lot of people talking, Heather, including the conservative public safety critic Shannon Stubbs. Here's what she had to say about Minister Blair.
Our worry is that it undermines Canadians' confidence in equitable decision making, in whether or not the rules apply to everyone equally, the lack of transparency, the lack of clarity, and then frankly, the minister refusing to actually answer questions, makes Canadians wonder about the competence and the capacity and the consistency within the system.
So there you hear the opposition's view of all of this. What about Costco, Jonathan? Any reaction from the company itself?
Yes, Costco issued a statement to us yesterday. They said that their two executives were prepared to be turned away at the border, that they didn't have any prior approval, and that during the time they were in Canada, that they followed all health and safety protocols, including social distancing and wearing face coverings. The company says that they've both been tested for COVID-19 and are negative, and they were planning to come back for another warehouse opening in November, but they will no longer do that. But it does highlight the stark contrast between how some business executives are being treated and the more than 1 million Canadians who've been abroad since this COVID-19 pandemic started and were forced to come home and self-isolate for 14 days.
Jonathan, really appreciate your being with us this morning and the reporting work there. That's Jonathan Gatehouse.